Here in the real world, by any objective measure, the federal response to the coronavirus pandemic has been disastrously flawed, marred by mistakes and delays that have handicapped our efforts to mitigate the spread of the virus. The U.S. has the most confirmed cases in the world, one of the sharpest rates of growth, and multiple outbreaks in different parts of the country. There is no question that our federal government has done a worse job in containing this than many other countries. But in the alternate universe of the Trump show, everything is going great. President Trump is the man in control. There's a reason the president keeps appearing at the coronavirus briefings that are supposed to be about fact-based updates. He uses them as propaganda sessions, regularly spewing misinformation and lies when he is at the podium. They have morphed into something akin to Trump rallies without the crowds. The briefings are where he casts his failures in the most positive light. Yesterday, the man who initially dismissed the coronavirus threat, remember, we all heard it time and time again, said that if 100,000 Americans die from the virus, then he and his team have done a, quote, very good job. He tries to rally his base by berating journalists. The White House even appears to control the volume of the microphones of reporters asking questions, which is an innovation, by the way. This has not happened before, but they can use it to just cut off a reporter from asking any follow-ups. And of course, the president makes sure to call on propagandists to ask him the questions he wants to hear, sometimes just twice in the same briefing. And as dead bodies are being loaded into morgue trucks in New York City because the city is running out of space and hospitals, the president, in a new low even for him, was bragging this weekend and at the press conference about what good TV ratings he's getting. I'm joined now by Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, who's been sounding the alarm about the sluggish federal action to help hospitals and first responders. He tweeted today that the new Republican argument is that if you criticize President Trump's coronavirus response, you are disloyal Chinese communist propagandist. Senator, I think that regular information in times of crisis from the government on sort of the science and facts and policy are essential, but I personally can't help but feel these daily sessions are bad for the country, even dangerous from a public health perspective. What is your view?
Well, the president really sees, his only responsibility as one of managing a public relations campaign about trying to set expectations so ridiculously low that he can't help but step over the bar. I mean, listen, there has been no strategy from this administration, no comprehensive response to coronavirus from the very beginning. He has not taken control of the manufacturing of protective equipment. He has not federalized the supply chain. He has issued absolutely no national guidance on social distancing or business and school closures. He has left all of this to the mayors and the governors, and instead he just runs a public relations operation that, as you mentioned, unfortunately regularly dispenses very bad advice to Americans. And so, I think it's pretty harrowing for all of us to watch this lack of leadership from the White House and to, frankly, watch a lot of the media go along with it because his press conferences, as always, are still entertaining, in part because he is combative, in part because he does lie, and you can catch him in those lies and hold him accountable. But that doesn't make for an effective public health response.
Yeah, that's why he's bragging about the ratings. It's obviously above my pay grade. I don't make the call about we take them or not, but it seems crazy to me that everyone's still taking them when you got the MyPillow guy getting up there talking about reading the Bible. On February 5th, you were in a briefing and on preparedness, on precisely this question. You tweeted this. On February 5th, I sat in a meeting with top administration officials as senators pressed them to request emergency funding to hire staff and stockpile supplies for the coming crisis. They said they had it covered, didn't need any additional funding. What a fatal screw up. What was that briefing like on February 5th?
So, this is an interesting moment for a briefing because the impeachment trial has not yet wrapped up, but the administration brings their top folks before the Senate for a private briefing to explain what they're doing about the coronavirus, which at that point had only had a couple cases on the West Coast. And it was just an absolutely chilling briefing. And I walked out and immediately made a statement that it was shocking to me that the administration was refusing our offers of early funding. A number of us in that meeting said to the administration, you need to request emergency dollars from us now. If what you're saying is true, then we cannot respond to this eventual crisis without starting to buy supplies now, without starting to staff up in hospitals and local public health districts now. And what the administration said on February 5th was, no, we got it. We don't need any additional money. we can handle this with all the resources we have. What we know is that that was a fatal mistake, and their unwillingness to come to Congress was both a sign of the fact that they just didn't understand how awful this was going to be, but also just a signal of their fundamental ideological belief that the federal government doesn't have a responsibility at a time of crisis like this. Right. I mean, the White House is just full of people that don't think it's their job, and that was telegraphed pretty clearly in that meeting in early February.
You know, there's concern now about, when you look at this federalized response, there's also concern now that you're getting favoritism. And the president basically said that he admitted this. He said he tells Mike Pence not to call certain governors he doesn't like. Gretchen Whitmer's on the record saying that shipments of needed supplies were canceled. She believes that's at the behest, essentially, of the White House. There's ProPublica reporting that Florida, on the other hand, has gotten everything they've asked for. There's been a wide disparity in terms of how the federal government's responded to some states and others. And I should note here, for fairness, Andrew Cuomo has been very grateful for some of the federal aid that has been directed to New York after lots of back and forth. Do you have those concerns right now that there's essentially an uneven response federally that depends on the politics of the governor at play and the degree to which the president's ego is massaged?
Well, it sort of feels like Ukraine all over again. The president is, now, instead of using foreign aid, using emergency relief in order to try to get people to do his political bidding. I mean, the message seems pretty clear. If you criticize the president, then you are going to get attacked and you are potentially going to have critical medical supplies withheld. And if you get the president's back politically, then we'll send you what you need. Listen, Chris, have called on Congress and the administration to federalize the manufacture and distribution of critical medical supplies, because I just don't see any way that the private sector gets the stuff to the places that need it the most. Admittedly, though, I'm very nervous about my own proposal, because that puts an enormous amount of power, additional power, in the hands of a capricious and vindictive White House. And so we're caught between, two unacceptable realities, one in which the private sector is misappropriating resources and not producing enough, and a second in which the president has authorities that any chief executive should possess, but is going to use them in a way that hurts the nations and benefits himself politically.
Chris Murphy, Senator from Connecticut, thank you so much for being with me tonight.